new livestock.
It's moving in day for these dung beetles.
Not very often that new livestock arrives in an ice cream container.
And these arrivals are settling into their new home, a faecal environment on Simon Thomson's Ruapuke farm.
I think that should be okay. Yeah, it's just a bit weird because, you know, you're releasing these little fellas and there's very little to see with them once you've put them in. So we're going to place about 20 bugs per cow pat. They're going to have a feed, have a bit of sexy time, burrow down, make some holes, lay their larvae in there. The bugs will come back and they'll keep following the herd as they move on, and in 8 to 10 weeks these little fellas will come up out of their burrows, sniff for where the closest manure is and fly off and dive into that.
These tiny critters are on a very important mission, helping to reduce effluent runoff whilst reducing methane emissions.
Yum yum yum! Yeah, feed away little dudes.
Along the way, they minimise the spread of parasites when the cow poo is buried into the ground.
So these burrows with this species are about 20 centimetres deep, so we're wanting, so that is integrating the manure down to that depth. It's bringing subsoil up with their digging, so that mixing is good for the soil profile, creating aeration and drainage channels.
Interest in dung beetles is growing, with New Zealand's only supplier having to double its beetle colonies to meet more than 50 orders each week.
We've had far more orders than we have beetles. As a result of that, we're expanding our facilities to be able to cope with the demand to do catchment level or regional level, even national level releases.
With nearly a decade of expertise working with dung beetles, Mr. Forgy says they could provide an answer to our environmental and water quality issues. But despite approaching government ministers for help, so far he's had no response.
The Ministry for the Environment really does need to look at this as an alternative technology. I'm not saying to replace existing ones, but to add it to the toolbox if it's serious about sorting this water problem out.
However, the Ministry of Primary Industries is showing some interest. It's invested $135,000 into a dung beetle test project, which started in 2015 and ends in June this year. But Mr. Forgy thinks more needs done and suggests the government needs to establish a nationwide dung beetle scheme.
It's great farmers are doing it at a farmer level, but for it to actually take some sort of positive effect on water quality in a catchment, you need a catchment level or regional level release of beetles. And it's probably the only one that addresses sustainably manure control at the source of the problem, rather than once it's already in the water, what do we do with it?
Some regional councils have supported the use of dung beetles, but Dairy NZ, which represents New Zealand's dairy farmers, say they're not convinced the beetles directly address issues like nitrogen leaching and greenhouse gas emissions, and that there's more effective ways to combat the environmental impact of farming.
Go on, little buggies.
In the interim, it's farmers like these that are continuing to invest in dung beetles.
Just drop and slop that on top. Yeah.
And he's convinced it works.
Yeah, scrapey. Animals will naturally avoid grazing around a cow pat. They don't want to eat next to their buddy's poop. So the dung beetles come in, break up that cow pat, perforate it, it gets dried, rained on, UV light, so it gets sterilised, and by the time they come back on their next round into that paddock, the dung should be pretty much gone, rather than these cow pats sitting there for weeks and months. So effectively your farm is larger.
Hunter Calder, Local Focus.